What traits do entrepreneurs need to have?
Risk-taking abilities is number one. Adaptability is another one.
At what point do you think it starts getting easier for an entrepreneur?
I don't think there is a time frame of once you're 3 years old, and suddenly things are going to become easier. I think as you start maturing, as you start developing systems in your business,
Hello and welcome back to the Canadian Dream Podcast. A few months ago, we were joined by Karla Briones on episode 40. Karla is an inspiring entrepreneur and business consultant based in Ottawa in Canada. She has not only built successful businesses on her own, but she's also helping people from all over the world start and grow their ventures here in Canada. In our first conversation, Karla shared her incredible journey from immigrating from Mexico with her family to launching her first business at the age of 6 and growing multiple businesses here in Canada. Today, she's back to dive deeper into the biggest challenges that entrepreneurs face when they're starting a business here in Canada, including mental blocks, the unique obstacles that women often encounter, and so much more. So, without further ado, Karla Briones.
thanks for having me back. It's super exciting.
I just asked Karla maybe 2 or 3 hours ago, hey, you want to come back on the Canadian Dream Podcast? Let's do this.
And we got down to business right away. So super, super awesome.
And it totally suits you because you are such a go-getter. You do not like to waste time.
Well, I'm a busy mom too, so.
Busy mom, busy entrepreneur, busy coach. And you started your first business when you were 6 years old. I don't know, it's not a real business. I think you shared that story before.
Yes, candy business when I was in grade 1.
And now I want to know, let's start with this. What has changed since our first episode about 6 months ago?
So I do have an Immigrant Entrepreneur Academy digital program. And that program I launched about 6 years ago. So 6 months ago, I took a look at the program, the content and whatnot, and I realized that, as you know, immigration laws and immigration requirements, they change fairly quickly here in Canada, especially in the last few months. So there was a section in my program that needed like major updating. So I started updating that, and then I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna update the entire course. I'm gonna, I'm gonna bring it up to snuff. I'm gonna add more things, delete things that are not necessarily helpful. And I just did a complete overhaul in Immigrant Entrepreneurs Academy. So it's been crazy, but it's been also pretty exciting.
How many businesses are you running right now? And what is this side business that you have coaching people and mentoring them?
You could say I could have 5 businesses, and one of them is a non-for-profit organization. So I have 2 global pet food stores. That's how I started 15 years ago. I started in the retail world, in the animal industry, and then I moved into my own Karla Briones consulting, where I help, I do the coaching and whatnot, but I help larger organizations develop their own programming. Then I have my own, coaching for my own clients. And that's where I launched Immigrants Developing Entrepreneurs Academy, or IDEA, which is the online academy. And just about a year ago, I launched Immigrant Entrepreneur Canada, which is the non-for-profit arm. So I'm running, juggling quite a few balls. The retail businesses, the ones that have been in operation for 15 years, they're managed and operating by a great leadership team. So I'm not needed on a day-to-day basis, and I can focus on what I'm really, really passionate about.
And you are also a mother of how many?
I have 2 kids, a 16-year-old and a 12-year-old. They are keeping me really busy.
That is also like another side business.
That's another layer.
Another full-time job.
But now they start going into competitive sports, and it's like driving them everywhere. So that's another part-time job right there.
Okay. I wanted to know, I think it's a question that I might have asked you before, but again, what traits do entrepreneurs need to have?
I love this question. So I think that number one, if you read any magazines, Entrepreneur Inc. and all of those amazing magazines about entrepreneurship, everybody's going to tell you that an entrepreneur has to be a risk taker. So risk taking abilities is number one. Adaptability is another one, and just being able to adapt to change and figure things on the go. Those are very specific qualities that any entrepreneur, I think, should be open to or have, or at least open to developing.
Are you forgetting ambition?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, there's so many qualities, but in my opinion, I think risk taking, obviously, I mean, risk taking and ambition is kind of like, this is a little bit there. There's so many out there, but I think adaptability, risk taking abilities.
You also mentioned before, a few months ago, that your parents, the lesson that you learned from them is to never take no for an answer.
Yep. Absolutely. So never take no for an answer, because you're going to hear so many no's in your journey as an entrepreneur. And the idea is to continue to be taking those risks and to continue to be adapting to those no's, because out of 100 no's, you might hear that one yes that's going to, change the course of your life.
Karla, you have had, like you said, these businesses for 15 years. At what point do you think it starts getting easier for an entrepreneur?
I think with experience comes things becoming a bit easier, right? Um, However, I have heard of entrepreneurs that have been in their businesses for 10, 15, 20 years, and it's still not easy. In I don't think there's a time frame of like, once you're 3 years, all of a sudden things are going to become easier. I think as you start maturing, as you start developing systems in your business, systems that could be replicated, systems that could be, given out to somebody else so that they can replicate those systems. I think that's the moment when things start getting a bit easier. So the moment you start figuring out what are all the different balls in your business, and how to systemize the working of that juggling act. I think that that's the moment when things start getting a bit easier.
Right. Most businesses, however, shut down within the first, what is it, 4 or 5 years?
I think it's 5 years. Yeah.
Do you remember, looking back, did it get any easier, or did it feel any safer after those first 5 years?
It depends. I think one of the biggest things that happened to the entire ecosystem was a pandemic, right? So it was, when things like that you never prepare for it doesn't matter how many years you've been in business, there's always that fear of like the unknown, right? It does get easier after 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, so long as you're systemizing and trying to figure out how to like take yourself out of like, basically working on the business and not necessarily in the business. After 5 years for me, it was like, okay, I think I've systemized a few things. I think I can now delegate, I'm delegating stuff, and I feel like I have a handle on trends in my business. I think I have a handle on hiring methods, so on and so forth. So I started to feel like I could do this. Like, I could do this. But then the pandemic hits, and like it throws everything, upside down. But the systems is what really, is what really helps.
Right. And you mentioned you have, was it 5 businesses, 5 different businesses?
Correct.
Which one is the most profitable? Which one has been the most challenging? And which one is the most rewarding business that you have?
Ooh, okay.
So today I am inspired.
Yeah. So obviously the most profitable right now is going to be one of my shops. We yeah, obviously. So it's a high volume store, fairly profitable. You actually be surprised. My consulting, anything consulting is very profitable because the costs of running a business like that are very minimal, but obviously the volume is not as high as, for example, like a seven figure retail operation. So in terms of volume and profits, I think the retail operation would be the most, what was the other one? The hardest one to get
Rewarding.
going? Oh, the most rewarding. The most rewarding. This is not necessarily a business. This is my non-for-profit organization. This is where I'm pouring my heart and soul right now, Immigrant Entrepreneur Canada. It's a national non-for-profit where I'm trying to basically create the impact that I create on a one-on-one basis with my clients and the the organizations that I work with. But I'm trying to basically create a non for and it's only a 1 year old organization where I help empower immigrant entrepreneurs through programs, mentorship, and community building. And this is what I'm most passionate about, and trying to bring funding from different levels of government, the private sector, to create these programs and help the immigrant entrepreneurship ecosystem grow. That's, as you can see, I'm very passionate about this.
Yeah, let's
And I
talk
can't.
more about that.
What was the other question?
No,
There were
that was
three.
the most successful, the most profitable, and the
Oh,
most
okay.
lucrative. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess the most successful. I mean, success is measured differently for everybody. I think all of them, in my own opinion, are successful in their own different ways. Yeah. So I think I mean, it's trying to. I don't know. I like them all, and I think they're all successful. But obviously, the one that I'm most passionate about is this non for profit.
Let's talk about the non-for-profit and also your consulting business. I want to
Yeah.
talk about how you help people, men and women,
Hmm.
maybe more men, to create their own businesses or to run their own businesses in Canada. Before that, I'm gonna take a risk here. I'm an entrepreneur too. I like risks. I like taking risks, but let's not jump into the rabbit hole. Just a little bit on the surface. How uh, confusing can it be for a woman to think that they must make a choice between having a family and becoming an entrepreneur?
I think maybe 10, 15 years ago, it was still a struggle.
Mhm.
Um, oh, yeah, I think 10, 15, maybe 20 years ago, it was still an issue where women were hesitating going into entrepreneurship, but they were still doing it. But I think now that the world is more embracing of diverse entrepreneurs, that there are more programs to encourage entrepreneurship, whether you're a woman, whether you're part of the LGBTQ community, whether you're an underrepresented entrepreneur. I think there is more openness to it, and more women are becoming entrepreneurs. Now, the issue that I still see is that there is still a disparity between the number of women entrepreneurs going into the ecosystem and the percentage of them that get funding and that get venture capital and that get money to actually scale their ventures. There's still a disparity. Is it hard? Yeah, it is hard being a woman entrepreneur, especially when you're a mother and you have other commitments. But I think that nowadays, more and more, we're seeing more women embracing this lifestyle.
And what is the key? I know there's many things you can do to be successful in both
Hmm.
realms, but if you had to pick one piece of advice or one key to be fulfilled in both realms, what would you say?
A very strong support system, whether it is a support system with when it comes to your family, a support system with friends, a support system if you have a business, a great staff. Um, I think support system, especially for women, it's very important. I mean, for anybody, it's very important. But women, we are very much into creating our own ecosystems of support. And I find that the women entrepreneurs that I deal with that have the strongest support systems, or that go out and seek that support system, whatever it looks for that like for them, those are the ones that are the most successful. But support systems are going to be huge.
Is that why you created this networking group that you have a
Absolutely.
wait list for?
Absolutely. Yes,
How long
this
is that
now.
wait list usually
So
for?
it's not necessarily a wait list. So the networking group that I have is for immigrant women entrepreneurs, and it's because they were the immigrant women, racialized women were the most affected by the pandemic because they're notoriously service-based businesses. And I wanted to create a group where immigrant women entrepreneurs were welcome. They could find mentorship, they could find program support, but also, like, for example, make it a little bit more open. For example, I talk about the support system, right? We have women who are moms and who want to come to our networking events and want to come to the programs that we create, but they don't necessarily, because they're immigrants, they don't necessarily have that support network. So our events, we are kid friendly. right? So they are networking and they're doing business with each other and they're referring business, but there's kids around as well. And as a fellow woman entrepreneur and a mom, I think that it's very important to create those inclusive environments where
How
it's
often do you
okay
guys meet?
on a monthly basis, once a month. We started with 7 women, and we're now up to 200 of us every month, and we're
Right. So
growing.
how do you
And this
organize
is
those
just in
meetings?
Ottawa.
But normally, out of those 200, normally how many showed up at the last meeting?
It's not the same type of meeting every time. 1 month is more of a social meeting, and then the next one is more of a let's get to business type of meeting. So the last one that we organized was more of a social. We had 80 women attend to the social event, and then the one before we had 200 of them, because it was like the more formal event. And there's kids that come, whether it is the social one or whether it is the formal one, because that's just the reality
Yeah.
of what it's like to be a woman entrepreneur.
So I guess you have talked to hundreds or maybe even thousands of women,
Of
wannabe
course.
entrepreneurs
Yeah.
or entrepreneurs in Canada.
In general, yeah.
Let's talk about the hurdles, the obstacles that
Hmm.
the average woman, I know there's no average woman, they're all special, I know. But the obstacles that you see women facing, how much of those obstacles are practical? How much are mental? And how
Hmm.
much are social obstacles?
It's not necessarily just women. I think in general for immigrant entrepreneurs, um, some of them are going to be practical because as an immigrant entrepreneur, you come to a new country and you don't necessarily know the business landscape. How does it work
Mm.
here in Canada? So, like the practical knowledge that you need in order to open a business. So that's challenge number one, not knowing the landscape, not knowing what's going to work, what's not going to work. You come from a different country, different way of living and different things that would be that would be a hit back in your country. That may be a miss in this country. So I think practicality wise, I think that's one of the things that affects immigrant entrepreneurs in general, regardless if you're a man or a woman. Women tend to be there's more mental barriers in terms of not thinking that they're good enough, unfortunately. And this is not just immigrant women entrepreneurs, but I think this is women entrepreneurs in general. And I'm not going to say all of them. It's just something that I've noticed. Women tend to discard themselves sooner than men, whether it is to apply for funding, whether it is to open their business. They want to open it, but they don't think they're 100% ready to do it. And it's all mental, right? Whether some men can be a bit more like higher risk takers and they don't, they just do it. And I'm making generalizations here because I've seen women who are, extremely risk takers and whatnot. But as a whole, I find that, you know, women tend to discard themselves before than the male counterparts, whether it is in professionally or and in entrepreneurship as well.
I want to talk more about that, but there's also one item that we left out. It's the social aspect. So the social hurdles would be language, networking.
I think that affects both immigrant men and women. Um, the not the not knowing people, the not having that network, the not having access to they have access to the information, but you know this, you come to Canada and there's so much information. I think Canada, it's so cool, you have information available at your fingertips, but knowing
How to
how
navigate
to
it.
navigate that information is key, or knowing somebody that knows how to navigate that information is going to be key. And I think that affects both. It affects both men and women, immigrant entrepreneurs. I'm speaking in that demographic specifically.
Yeah, I saw that on another podcast you were on 1 or 2 months ago. You mentioned that you connected someone that was consulting with you. You connected him with someone else who was operating a franchise in the same field that that person was looking into buying a franchise.
Mm-hmm.
I'm realizing this more and more as an immigrant here as well. I've been here for 13 years. Networking is many times more important than talent, skills,
Yes,
or even sales.
I
The
agree.
people that you know, the
Absolutely.
connections that you make, they can take you much further, and they can also prevent you from failing over and over.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. And it's really interesting because when we come as immigrants, we're not used to doing that type of networking, right? Because we've already had a built-in network in our
We take it
country.
for granted. Yeah, we
We
know
take it
everybody in our
exactly.
town. Yeah,
Yeah, and then all of a sudden we come to Canada and everybody's telling us network, 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 and you're like, okay, how?
volunteer, Carla.
Yeah. So I know, yeah. So anyway, so we take for granted our built-in network that we have in our countries that when we come here, we realize, oh my goodness, like, yeah, we really need to work for those connections, and those connections are going to be the difference between you perhaps finding that ideal job or that ideal business opportunity or not. So yeah, networking is super important.
Yeah, so it might sound obvious, you already answered, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about that. How are you leveraging your network, not only for yourself in your business, but also for your clients, for your friends, your community that is just growing?
As a business advisor, coach, whatever you want to call me. I think that's my unique selling proposition is that I am not selfish and I am a connector. I love and I genuinely get excited about other people's success. I really want to see other people succeed. Genuinely. Like I don't BS this at all. And if it means that this person that I'm working with or this person within my, my acquaintances would be able to reach success faster by going through one of my my connections. I make those introductions. I kind of, and I have a little black book that I'm not shy to share. I'm not selfish to introduce people, because I find or I think that by connecting people with other people, we just grow the ecosystem and make it stronger. And I'm speaking about the immigrant entrepreneurship ecosystem.
Mm.
So I had some amazing people earlier in my career that were key to introducing me to others and helping me grow my network. That is sort of my way of giving back. So it's very important for me. It's basically it's how I operate. I operate by connecting people, and I know that eventually something good is going to happen.
How can anybody join your networking group in Ottawa?
Going to immigrantentrepreneurcanada.ca, and there is a tab there for meetups, and you just put your email address there, and you'll be notified when the next one is. It's fairly simple. I have requests to actually launch these meetups because first of all, I had men saying, yo, Karla, why is this only for women? So now we're launching the mixer event. So we've had a couple of mixer events where we bring men into the mix, and they're actually really fun, different energy, completely different energy. Still a lot of
Less
fun though.
talking?
No, actually, a lot of more business cards trading. So
Okay.
with the women, it's the type of networking is really cool with the women. It's a bit more vulnerable, and there's a lot more hugging with women. And then in the mixer events, there's a lot more business cards exchanging. It's very interesting to see the difference. So yeah, so immigrantentrepreneurcanada.ca in the meetups tab, just put your email. We have requests to grow these meetups across the country, and just a matter of getting the funding, the available funding and the partnerships to start launching in the different cities. But that is the goal. The goal is to, recreate what we've created here in Ottawa and bring it to different cities.
And connect people in different
Correct.
communities. Great. Back to the mental hurdles that female women
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurs usually face. Give me one or two examples of someone who came to you with a big mental block, and
Mm-hmm.
how were you able to help them?
One particular person, single mother of three, immigrant woman who has this incredible business. And when I started working with her, she didn't really think it was a business. She didn't think of it as a business. She just thought it was something she was doing at home, just because she loved it, and she loved it for herself. And there were people interested in buying, from her as well. And she just thought it was sort of like this little thing. And I'm like, but what do you want it to be? Like, do you want it to be a little thing? Do you want people to associate what you're doing as just this little thing that you do kind of on the side? And then she came to the realization, it's like, no, I want this to be a business. I'm like, so then you need to stop thinking about it as a little thing, and you need to start thinking about it as a business, regardless of the size, regardless of, oh, but it's not a business. I'm only selling maybe, in a year, $2,000. Like, it's still a business. It's still a business. It's not a little thing. It's a business. And the moment you start treating it like a business, it's the moment that you are going to see the fruits of your labor. So we started working with her. I started working with her, and it's really cool because since I started working with her this in May, we started working together. She's officially registered the business. She's tested her product in a bigger demographic, and she's now generated over 50K in revenue just since May.
Wow. So she
So
generates 2,000 a year, and now in just a few months, 50K.
$50,000 in
Okay,
revenue.
what business? We should start that business here in Ecuador.
She's I'm not gonna, obviously
Nice.
confidentiality, but she's really targeting a specific, demographic that's being underserved. And like what she said is like,
That's awesome.
you open my eyes, and you made me realize that I do have a business. And she's like, I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur. I always thought that I was just doing this, kind of on the side, and having a business, like, there's no way I can. Single mom of three, and now she's thinking big. Now we're, getting together on an advisory board to help her expand that business, and so treating it like a business, like,
Yeah. So it can
so,
grow as a business.
and it will. It's a fabulous business serving an underserved community. And she has that first movers advantage too. So she has a little gem of a business, and now she's thinking like a business owner, and she's thinking like, there are opportunities of expansion,
Yeah.
and she is treating it that way too.
That's awesome. How much has this consultation business helped you improve as a person and improve the way you run your own business? Because you were you were learning from all these other failures.
A lot. It's helped me quite a lot. It's helped me to be um to not take things for granted, obviously. But it's definitely, it's not that it's helped me because I'm like taking ideas from here and there. It's helped me become a better communicator. It's helped me become a better strategic thinker, because I have to strategically think on behalf of my clients, right? I need to see the big picture really fast from the times that we meet. I need to be here over, like, having the bird's eye view of their business, and and thinking strategically on how to help them. It's also helped me learn about a lot of industries, right? Industries that I would have never, I've done myself, I'm not, personally interested in, but I've learned a lot about different industries, whether it is service-based, product-based, tech industries. I remember a year I was helping a farmer. And so I learned a lot about the farming industry in Canada, and it's just so cool. It's so cool. It's just like every day I'm learning through my clients different industries, different ways of doing business. And it's really cool because I'm able to take from all of them, and every time I see a new client, be able to provide different advice, right? Because I'm exposed to all of these different types of businesses, what's working in one of them, what's not working in all of them, or some of them, and then apply it to these other new clients. So yeah, so I've learned a lot.
Do you ever invest in any of these businesses?
I've been asked to invest, but I do have a rule. It's a personal rule where I try not to, unless the idea is really, really good. I haven't come up with that yet, but I have a personal rule where I want to keep my arm's length between strategic advice and investing in a client. Yeah, I tried with one and it didn't work out, and I'm like, no, maybe let's have some separation between clients and financial gains.
Okay, fair enough. What does your husband do, Carla?
And he teaches entrepreneurship. So he's like
Oh,
a business teacher at the high school level. So the conversations at home, it's all about business.
so something I am interested on At, at a personal level, where are you guys investing or parking your money? What do you do in Canada? How are you growing your wealth? What's your A plan?
For myself personally,
Yeah, you and your
uh,
husband.
yeah,
Are
so
you
it's business.
reinvesting everything in the businesses? Are you planning on opening something else, or are you investing in real estate?
Yeah, so it's a combination of things. It's not just one thing. But it could be summarized in real estate because we do have some investment properties that we rent, like in Canada and internationally, and in business basically, but our own businesses.
Always putting money back in and growing, growing, growing.
Correct.
Yeah, and opening new ventures.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you looking forward to the most now? What is your plan for the next, say, 5 years? This is not a job interview. Where do you
Yeah,
see
no, no,
yourself
no.
in 5 years?
I want to open a venture capital fund. So yeah, that's what I want to do. So I want to be able to have the non-for-profit arm where it has the programming and the support for immigrant entrepreneurs. But to your question, do I ever invest in my own clients? Eventually I want to have complementing, from the non-for-profit organization, a venture fund where I'm able to invest in the immigrant entrepreneurs that want to either, open, scale, or acquire businesses.
How much are you working now with other venture capital funds compared to looking for government grants for your clients?
So right now I can't really, because I'm a non-for-profit organization, there's no necessarily a lot of synergies between a non-for-profit and a VC fund. So as a non-for-profit organization, right now I'm looking at grants, government grant, which is harder than you think, by the way. So at the same time, I'm thinking as an entrepreneur with the non-for-profit and trying to run it as a social enterprise. So actually create businesses or create a business within the non-for-profit so that it could keep funding the programming and not have to depend on government funding because it's really hard to get government funding. So in terms of me dealing with VC funds right now, I am not. I want to be my own.
Okay, no venture capital funds yet. Okay,
Not yet.
do we still have time? I remember you said you had to leave.
Yeah, I have another five minutes.
Okay, Karla, are you writing any books anytime soon?
Yes, and you know what? And maybe this is my own mental block. Oh my God. This is great therapy, my friend. So yeah, so I get asked that question all the time, but then I'm like, well, what would I write about? Would I write about like a textbook kind of business book or my life journey or something like that mixes both? So yeah, so I've thought about this
Yeah.
and I think eventually I will, but not in the immediate future.
Okay, so tell me while you're still working on your book, tell me about or tell our audience about your masterclass now.
I actually run them every year, and every year is slightly different because I take a year, and for me, the new year is September, by the way. For me, New Year in January, it doesn't feel the same. For me, New Year is September when everything starts getting crazy, right? So every September, I try to take a look at the year. I review the year, the clients that I've had, and sort of like my most frequently asked questions, or what are like the three things that my clients are continue to either struggle or want more information on, and so on and so forth. And then I categorize those three topics, and then I try to figure out, is there a masterclass that I can create, or like a webinar, masterclass, whatever you want to call it, where I talk about those three things that could potentially help the next wave of immigrant entrepreneurs. So it is a masterclass where I'm going to be dealing about how to know if your business idea is going to be profitable or not in Canada, how to get access to funding and support programming for your business. And the third is it's a very like tactical question or very mechanical question, but how to know, like, you want to open this business. I mean, there's a slew of permits, licenses, and regulations that affect every business depending on the industry that they're in. So how to know if you're going to require any or all or some of these businesses and license and permits. So I'm going to be discussing 3 different tools that are available and that I think everybody should know about. So that is the masterclass.
The last topic, the third one, is related to a question that I was thinking here, I was pondering, should I talk about this or not? It sucks talking about politics in Canada, especially if you're not a crazy leftist. Especially if you're not liberal, you cannot, talk much.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk about what your political views are, or at least what obstacles immigrants might face that are related to politics? Meaning, for example, I have here regulations, taxes, grants, quotas. How challenging is the current political scenario for immigrant entrepreneurs?
Politically, and Ottawa is like government town, right? So I'm immersed in politics here in Ottawa, whether I want it or not. So when it comes to the bringing immigration, so increasing immigration targets into Canada, this past few years they've increased like crazy. I think the government at this point, by instituting that and not having a plan for affordable housing or housing, it has created not just an entrepreneurship issue with immigrants to Canada, but like a basic life issue. It's like, where are they going to live? If they can't find places to live that are, not ridiculously expensive, then how are they even going to open businesses? How are they even going to survive, right? So politically, I obviously don't agree with the incredibly aggressive immigration targets without them having thought about affordable housing. So that's number one. Number two, the other issue that I have with politics and policy is the fact that it's with the issue of funding. And this affects not just necessarily immigrant entrepreneurs, but any entrepreneur that is not tech-based. So there is a lot of government support out there and government funds, grants, and programs that help entrepreneurs who are in the tech industry. So if you are opening an app, if you have a technology-based company, that you bet there's going to be a lot of support out there. However, if you are somebody who wants to open, a service-based, product-based type of business, the chance and statistically, immigrant entrepreneurs tend to fall in this demographic. The chances of accessing, big dollars for you to be able to get there are going to be slim. Supports from ecosystem organizations, they tend to focus mostly on tech, on the tech startup community versus this traditional small business community. And that's all, priorities in the government, like political priorities that trickle down to the communities and the incubators and all of that, because that is the priority of the government, right? So, which is great. I can understand the sexiness of trying to find the next unicorn business, but the reality is, I think it's like that. It's a really high statistic where 95% of all jobs in Canada are actually generated by, the small and medium-sized businesses that don't tend to be, your unicorns and your technology
Mom
based.
and pop type of business.
Correct. Yeah. So those are like 2 things, and I can talk about this forever, but I have to get going.
Yeah. I wish we could talk about this forever, at least another hour. Karla, before you go, just to let's help our audience here with some motivation. Are there any quotes or principles you live by? And what would you like to say to anybody, especially an immigrant woman or a Canadian woman who has an idea, has been sleeping on it forever, and they're just waiting for some magic to happen? What would you like to say to them?
As humans in general, we, especially if you're of a specific type A personality, you want everything to be perfect. You want everything to be perfect. Yeah, in other ways, you're not going to launch it. You're not going to do it. It's not perfect enough. It's not ready enough. And I always say launch ugly. It doesn't matter. Progress over perfection. And there's always opportunities for you to iterate, to see what's working, what's not working, and iterate. See what's working, what's not working, iterate, iterate, iterate. And that's where you're going to get momentum versus waiting until everything is perfect for you to get going. So I'd say progress over perfection, launch ugly, and just iterate.
Love it. Thank you so much, Karla. I'll
You're
see
very
you
welcome. All
hopefully soon
right, have a
again.
good one.
Okay?
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. And thank you for tuning in again for this super quick episode on the Canadian Dream podcast. If you liked it, remember, if you're watching this on YouTube, to click on like, share, write your comments, and also subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next episode.